Mr. Roach.
Here.
Commissioner Haynes.
Here.
Commissioner Bowers. Here. Commissioner Hedden. Here. Mayor May.
Here we have a quorum present. Just the first item would be citizen comments. If there's any folks here, I haven't seen any.
Well, it's because it's not fair.
Everybody's gone.
There's other
Okay.
business, you know.
I got tired last month.
Well, we will move past citizen comments and go to discussion of the tentative agenda. Here's your travel form, Commissioner Beck.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Did Commissioner Hayden see it?
Yeah.
I signed it.
And city clerk, here's these documents I signed. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments about the tentative agenda for the 23rd meeting? All right.
I have one question. Did we skip over it was one of the minutes?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
We need to
Did you,
discuss that.
They're not in here, right?
They're not in here. No, it's not a voting meeting.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to ask the city manager to call on appropriate staff for any reports or comments.
Mr. Scott?
We have one item that we would like to add to the agenda for the 23rd that deals with the Crestwood. It's a contract extension with HDR for construction administration and construction inspection for the project. Tom and I have worked out an arrangement, all of that. He's funding all the design changes associated with the project, and my department will be funding all the CA and inspection. So we'd like to add that to the consent if there's no objection. And that's what, Tom, $38,000.
I've had a request by commissioners that we return to citizen comments if there's any objection to that. If not, Mr. Kroll came in and you wanted to say something under citizen comments?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just wanting to know where
Go
the
ahead.
process was excuse me, I'm Dennis Kroll with Kroll Insurance, and I just want to know where the process was on the employee benefit plan. I hadn't heard anything in a couple of weeks, and I didn't see it on the agenda, but I came by to check on it.
Okay.
Staff is moving forward, if I may.
Sure, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Staff is moving forward with the direction that was set at the work session and then briefly discussed at the last voting session by the commission. It was on the agenda, and the consensus was to move forward as the staff had recommended. I think we went with Plan 1, Strategy 1, and we had some design changes, and we had some copay insurance premium copay changes, and those are to be effective January 1, 2014. And the other considerable change was to allow spouses onto the city's plan, but as a secondary coverage only. So we are moving forward in that direction.
Can you discuss your consideration of changing your TPA, where that's been, or have you made the phone calls that we recommended to look at saving you money based on your last year's claims?
We had our TPA and HealthSmart, HealthSmart is our TPA. We had them provide information with regard to the prescription drugs and the health program. Some of the information that another vendor was using was actually from a previous 6 months prior to HealthSmart's taking over. The discounts were very similar. According to our figures, the actual fee was greater for the other vendor and not for HealthSmart than they were for HealthSmart. And finally, the City Commission did approve a 3-year contract with the current TPA. We are in the first year of that contract, and there would be a considerable penalty if we were to opt out at this time. So,
You're in your second year, right?
no, sir. We are on the first of a 3 year.
Before I know the state attorney will have to look up. Really, it's 2 questions is the most I can allow it, otherwise we get into cross-examination.
Okay.
But you can make as many comments as you want.
Okay. Well, my
And then if you
comment
need
is
questions
this is the
answered-
second year of a 3-year contract.
It is the first year. I'm told it is the first year of a 3-year contract.
And then if you want a lot of other questions that you can just like ask us afterwards, or you can send a note to us and we'll get all
Okay,
that to you.
okay. Because that was the information that we were given by your current TPA, and that's why I'm here, because I don't think that information is correct. Or what we're getting from your current TPA is not correct. We've got some issues. I may request an open record just to double check. Because that's what we got before, and the information we based our information on is what we got from your TPA. So if they're not on the square, then we got problems.
And some things you don't have to, you can just send us an email, and a lot of stuff we can probably answer. And if it is, you need a copy of a record, then we'll get that for you. Is that it?
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm disappointed because the work that we had done was considerable savings, but that's okay. Thank you. I'll request it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, just so the commission knows, I usually allow 2 questions. We get to a third when it gets into cross-examination, and that's why the city attorney and I both look at each other. We keep tabs of that, and it's not to cut anybody off. It's just to prevent cross-examination. All right, so we'll go back into your next report.
Any
Chris,
further, Mr. Scow?
Go ahead.
Mr. Mueller?
There's a structure on Home Street with an abandoned home, immediately next to the Habitat for Humanity structure that's being renovated. We're having trouble getting 3 bids, but we're hoping to get at least 2 bids. We have 1 by the end of this week. And if so, I'd like to add that to the agenda for demolition. If not, it won't be on
Is there, well, if there's no objection, okay, we'll put that on there.
Thank you. Chief Wilhoit?
No.
Thank you. Chief Sloan?
Just 2 items. First of all, we went with the new billing company. One of the things they recommend is that we consider hardship cases. You know, previously, I looked at something from Mr. Moore, said that, that it would take an order. There's some other little issues that we're working on, but on the hardship case, they recommend that if the hospital that we transported to took a hardship case, that we take a hardship case. And a hardship case would be that someone who doesn't have insurance at all, isn't insured someplace else, the social workers at the hospital try to push them towards Medicaid, Medicare, whatever the case may be. And in the end, they could not find anything. So, for example, a family of 4, the poverty line is $23,550. So if they didn't meet any of those qualifications, and the hospital granted them a hardship case, we would accept the hardship case as the ambulance did. But I think that along 2 conversations that probably takes, and just interested in if you want more information on it, or if that's, would rather just bill as is and let it go to collections if it goes to collections.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so how much more trouble would it be?
I don't think it'll be any trouble at all. In fact, the billing company recommends that we do so because it's probably more trouble when the individuals go to collections, revenue recovery, and it goes through that entire process with more steps.
Now, how would you know if a person meets that criteria at the hospital?
The hospital social workers and case managers, that they actually have to bring in W-2s, they have to bring in tax returns. I mean, it's pretty in-depth.
Okay, you already want to do it.
Right, no, we do not have to do it, and basically, if they granted one, then we would accept it.
In a year, what do we typically recover from collections on on cases that would fit this profile?
On that profile, I cannot tell you on the profile itself, because we haven't really
Done it.
haven't collected Democrat that says, oh, you make this much, you make this much. I can tell you that collections as a whole is only about 5%.
Of what you're owed?
Or that goes to actual collections agency is only about 5% that we collect. Of what we owe, what we're owed is probably, we're about 60% of what we're owed that we collect. And we're hoping that goes up.
That's pretty good.
But then the other 40% goes to collections.
So you're saying from the get-go we lose 40 cents,
Yes,
and then out of that 40 cents, how much do we collect?
only 5% of the 40.
So we're doing bad.
We're doing horrible.
Yeah, I got it. Sounds like a rental property.
But that's, and it's right. We'll see if there was any interest there.
Say try it. There's no harm in trying it.
Okay, I will get more information together, and then the next thing I want to pass by is by state law already we can collect on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th re-inspections for fire code violations, a fee starting out on the 3rd with $100, going to $200 and $500. We can give up to 60 days. Again, I think that we can probably take this as is. It would take some knowing how we're going to collect it. But I was going to see if you have interest in more information on re-inspections beyond the second time of fire code violations.
I would have interest in that because that's about the only time we can collect.
That's a bit right. It gets into how do you collect it, I'm sure, and we will work on that. But I will again I can't find anyone else in the state of Kentucky that's taking advantage of it right now, but it has already passed it's legislation that is in place. So, okay, I'll provide more information on both.
And that would give us more revenue.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Ms. Hall?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. McCarty.
I'd like to add something to the agenda if it's okay with the commission. It would be a contract for sports imaging. We're in need of replacing scoreboards at our athletic fields. They're in terrible condition. We spend a lot of money on them. And they sell advertising for the scoreboards, and they purchase the scoreboards, so the city is not adding money, which in turn we would save money because we won't have to purchase.
What's the cost of the scoreboard?
25 to 3,000 LED scoreboard. You're looking at $12,000. And we will have say on what the sponsorships go up on the scoreboard. So we do have control over what sponsors they will sell to.
Because no Bud Light.
So have you seen them? Did they look all right?
Yeah, Frankfort High has them.
Yeah.
We're not the first one. Frankfort High, they're good scoreboards. They're remote control. They don't have to. All they got to do is come in and cut the wire, place and put the electric. So they're wireless remote control.
So you think it's the way to go?
Well, we can save $12,000. I know you like to save money.
I do.
This did that for you.
Maybe you got a few things here, Chief. You can help us too.
That's all.
So if there's no objection, I'll add that to the agenda, which of course doesn't commit any member of the commission to being in support or opposition to that proposal. This item will be on the agenda for the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. McCarty. Mr. Bradley?
Just one thing to tell the commission, and I'd like to make a request also. We have started the sidewalk on St. Clair, and are trying to coordinate with the county the best we can to work around each other and get all those things taken care of. The request I have is I'd like to add to the agenda one item. If you remember a few months back, we talked about the wash bay for transit. We've got the second phase of the design is underway, but we need to have a contract for the contract administration. It's in the amount of $14,400. I'd like to add that to the agenda with QK4. The cost of the construction of the wash bay is all covered under grant. This would not be covered under that grant. However, the wash facility will be used could be used by all the different city vehicles, and would like to take the different divisions of Public Works and have all them pay into that to cover that cost of that contract administration. So I can get into more detail on the abstract of what that covers, but
if there's no objection, we'll add that item as well.
Anything further, Mr. Bradley? Ms. Newman? Any reports?
No.
Mr. Moore?
I have a report on property maintenance code liens, and I've got a handout. As you know, we've been working to collect property maintenance code liens, and we've contacted the folks who own the property that are subject to the liens, and through this process we've determined that right at $42,000 of the property maintenance code liens were actually washed out through the foreclosure process. So we have lost the ability to recover that $41,882 in liens that existed. We still have right at $213,466 in property maintenance code liens, and a substantial number of the people who own these properties has asked if the city would agree to waive the interest due on the liens if they would pay the lien. And if you'll recall, the state has done that in the past, and it's been a relatively successful program. So we've had a meeting with the city manager and the head of planning and building codes and request permission to draft an ordinance providing a moratorium on the interest payment for a period of 60 days. And the more, we would have to come up with a specific time frame. And if people paid within that time frame, they would have to pay the lien, but they would not have to pay the interest. And of course, what I would do is, if y'all are interested in that, I would draft the ordinance and then also provide you with how much interest we would lose by doing that. So you would be making a decision based on that information. The folks that would not pay the property maintenance code liens would then, we would forward letters to, of course, all the people whose property is subject to the property maintenance code liens, telling them of the moratorium. If they don't pay at that point, then we would look at the properties and see which ones to file foreclosure actions against. And what you would do is you would look at the property, see what the value of the property is. You would also look to see what kind of liens that the property was subject to already, such as mortgage liens, and then make a decision on whether or not there may be sufficient equity in the property to file a foreclosure action. There's one other thing that we discussed, and that's I'm going to meet with the personnel at the Revenue Department for the state, because they have passed a law which allows the Revenue Cabinet to basically, I believe, make assessments against monies that are owed by the state to a taxpayer. And if that taxpayer owes a lien or whatever to the city, then we may be able to get our money from that assessment collected by the state. I do not believe that that applies to property taxes, though. I need to confirm that. So if there is interest from the commission, I would go ahead and draft the ordinance providing for the moratorium, provide you all with more information, and we could either put it on the agenda for this month, or we could put it on the agenda for October for you all to vote on after you've had time to think about it more.
I mean, that's
Interested?
Me too.
Okay.
I'd say go ahead.
For September?
Yeah.
Okay.
No objection, we'll add that to the agenda.
Good work.
And that's with, of course, the planning building codes and the city manager working, so it's not just me working on this. And E.S.N.O. has also provided us with a lot of information. My note also mentions the nuisance code, and we've discussed this several times, and of course the nuisance code would allow the planning and building codes inspectors to cite people for violating a nuisance code, and if they don't pay for the violations, then at that point there would be a lien against their property, and that lien is actually second in priority only to taxes. So we would not have this issue to as great a degree where our liens get washed out through the foreclosure process. In looking at nuisance codes that have been enacted by other cities, what they've done is they've basically taken their wand and said that the Board of Code Enforcement is also the nuisance board. So that board basically wears two hats, and so you're not creating a whole new set of bureaucracy. I didn't know if that's something that you all wanted drafted up and for you all to review in October.
Any thoughts?
like to look at it.
We'll add that. You said October. We'll do that on October's agenda.
Do you want that for the work session so you can actually look at something at the work session?
Probably, right?
Sounds good.
Excellent.
So both of these will be in October?
First
First one, September.
First one September, second one October. I did get an email from, and I'm moving on past the nuisance board right now. I'm moving to a third subject, a brief report. I did receive an email from Rick Sparks, the county attorney today, who indicated that the hearing on the old line has not been set by the court yet. So I would think we'd get a hearing date within the next 30 to 45 days from the county attorney on the old YMCA.
That'd be October the 14th would be the work session.
Do they provide a listing of what's pending at the, like Rick Sparks, the various, I know some houses that are pending, that's been turned in to them that said this house, something needs to be done. Do we get a listing of what's,
Yeah, we can provide that.
But if it has not yet been set for a hearing, there is no listing that's provided, is it?
Well, we know about 5 that we have in the works, is what we call it. We can say which ones those are, but they're not.
and I can send you the couple that I'm interested in, but so you don't have to do a whole bunch of work, but I'd be interested in other ones also.
No, it's not. But yeah, I'll provide that in our weekly update.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay.
Concludes our report.
All right, so no more staff reports. Any commissioners have? Go ahead.
Who handles abandoned property? Okay, same email.
Oh, okay. All right, now, old business, any commissioners have old business?
It's just some things that were brought to me by citizens, so I'll just put them out here. Somebody approached me a couple of days ago about they want us to shift our focus with the police. I won't say what our focus is according to that person, but they would like us to put more manpower onto break-ins, to put it bluntly. I can't remember how else he described it, but this individual thinks our focus is highly directed in one other way and that we need to redirect some of that. So I'm putting it on the table. That's an issue that was brought to me, and I don't know what the commission thinks of that, what the chief thinks of that. I'm putting it out there for discussion. I can't remember how he worded it, but he identified the focus where he thinks our police department is where we're focusing now, and he thinks we're putting too much focus on that, and that it needs to be redirected a bit to attacking the break-in types of crimes that we've been seeing. So I'm putting that on the table. I don't know if people want to discuss it, or if Chief wants to respond to it, or this person thinks we're focused too much on catching the druggies and not enough on protecting the citizens in their homes. So that's one issue. The second issue I guess I can put out there, unless we want to discuss that first, is we had the walkway on that portion of Shinkle Lane, and it was brought to me that this person and the people in that area think we need to extend that walkway down to the bypass.
I thought it was going that way.
Shinkle Lane?
Yep.
Yes, it is in the plans to extend it all the way.
Do you know when it's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to build the second phase probably in the spring, which will go up to the landings.
Okay.
And the third phase will go on up to the bypass. Right now we're looking at cost-efficient ways to cross the railroad bed at the bridge.
So phase 2 is this spring?
Yeah.
Well projected, and phase 3 is when?
Would probably be the year after that.
Okay.
Could we hear what the chief has to say on that?
Sure.
Well, I'm not sure that we're focused in one area more than another, but when it comes to break-ins and drugs, who do you think's doing the break-ins?
I mean, it's not my question.
I understand.
I mean, but I will certainly put that question back to
and
that
I
person.
apologize for the flippant type answer, but
This is not my issue. Although I have had some
I
instances
understand, but
in my neighborhood. I think there have been 1, 2, 3, 4 that we know of, and some attempted that I talked with you about earlier. But this really is a citizen
believe
thing.
me, I understand, but my point is a lot of these crimes are so interrelated. Your
Okay.
thefts, like right now we're going through a phase with catalytic converters again.
Yeah.
That's come back up.
Mm-hmm.
So I would submit to you that we
And I will
don't have
submit to him.
one particular focus, but
I will submit to the citizen. It really didn't come from me, but I promise I will put it out
that's
there.
quite all right. If
Okay.
anybody has any type of question like that, please feel free to have them give me a call or talk
Sure.
to me. I'd be more happy to. But break-ins and thefts are a considerable problem in the community.
It does seem like they have escalated here in recent months. I don't know if that's true or not. It just seems that way. So just tell the citizen the drugs are like related to the break-in. So
Sure they are.
And that we're not really focused in one area. That we're just doing a well-rounded job.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, it's really.
we have to focus.
I really am just putting it out here for a
We have to
citizen. I
cast a
promise I
wide
would.
net there,
Right.
because
I
so
know.
many of these crimes are interrelated.
Nope. Let me, nope.
We'll come back.
I will bring a couple of things back at the next work session.
And Commissioner Roach has his hand up.
I can go last if anybody else has stuff.
I had one item, but
Go ahead, I have one too. Just go ahead. Go
Okay.
around.
The first one's just a FYI. We had them come and talk to us about the industrial park number 3 and those office lots that they have where they have 13 of them. They've sold one since the beginning of the thing.
Mhm.
Well, I went out there and talked to county judge and to the chairman of the KCDC board and Kim Smith, and I just suggested, and I don't know if they're going to do anything about it, and I realize we have limited power in this. I suggested that they maybe should contact some of the local developers and see if anybody might be interested in buying them all and sell them at a lot cheaper price. Because obviously, if you're charging $40,000 an acre for 60 acres worth of property, which is about $2.4 million that we haven't moved in 10 years, I suspect that we're not going to move it anytime soon. So I was hoping maybe they could get something in there. But anyway, that's just a sort of where we talked about that, where that went a little further. The other thing on old business is, we've been talking about the trying to save energy and trying to lower our bills. And remember, a year or so ago, y'all looked at a sustainability coordinator. We've had a study done at U of L. We've purchased a software, I think, to start tracking things. And I can see if Tom could kind of share with y'all what he thinks might be a good idea to how to, not to put him on the spot, but I just did, on how to cut energy costs at City Hall and in our other buildings without having to pay either a private sector company or pay staff.
Well, the U of L study that was done pointed at several things that we could do, most of which have already been done. One of the last things that we need to do here in City Hall is to finish changing out the lights. This program that we're in the process of setting up will go back 2 years and look at our utility costs for all of our buildings and the energy costs for these buildings. And so we can go back and look at dates when things were changed, and we can mark when those changes occurred and what has had a good effect and what has not had an effect at all. And then we can go forward with those changes and look at the other buildings. Lighting is always number one, and HVAC is usually number two. But I really think that we should make changes ourselves and get the reward now versus look at another company. They may look at what we've done so far and say, well, there's not enough for us to even be able to afford to come in and do it. We are meeting with someone this week just to talk about it from their perspective and see what they think. They may still want to look at it, but a lot of our buildings, some of our buildings are newer. Some of the fire stations will look at changing lights and stuff in later. but we want to see what's making the positive effects and go forward.
They're putting together a list of properties that perhaps we could sell. There's those ones out on Leonard Wood, and there's other places as well. I just want to throw out there, I think that whatever we do, I know that we didn't get a bid on those properties, I don't think, on that sealed bid, and I don't think any of us were real surprised by that. I think that whatever we do, if we can get KCDC to list it on their website, and then I would suggest that we get a realtor that has some level of a track record of effective at selling this type of property, and whatever we do, give it a strong marketing effort, because we really don't have any.
Mm-hmm. City Solicitor, Mr. Moore, and myself have a meeting with KCDC's Kim Smith Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, I believe, and we will discuss their advertising and the realtor as well.
Thank y'all. Then I had a quick question. Gary, is there any other buildings out there you know of that are on the verge of needing to be torn down, or health and safety issues or anything like that?
Yes.
How many we got?
There's probably at least 18 in reality. There are 5 that we have gone through the process of. We don't have enough funding to do all of them at once, so we've run until we get about 3 a year.
So we've got 18.
At least.
Could you get us a list of what we have and how much it would cost to do them? Do you have a sense of what each cost was, or do you just take 3 and then get bids on those and then go to the next?
We get bids each one.
We can't do any fire training, get the fire to burn them down, and we can get some training in on that. Get the SWAT team in and tear a whole place up.
Yeah, they can.
Sounds like fun.
But they train, but they don't burn it or tear it down. They train and punch holes before we go in.
It'll make the cost to tear it down cheaper, won't it?
Can you get us a list of the? Yes. You maybe already done that. I don't know. I've got so many lists I can't keep track of them.
I haven't given it to you all. No.
Okay. If you could give us a list of that, if we're able to find some money, maybe we could accelerate that. One last goals. In January or February we set forth a bunch of goals, and looks like we've done a lot of them. But I would request either this month or in October that we have a special meeting, or we have it as part of a meeting where we kind of revisit where we are. And because I'm sure some of the goals we've set we'd like to throw in the trash can. We don't want to do them now that some of us, like me, that are new, have learned something. They thought, well, that's probably not a real good idea. So we may want to adjust some we have, and we may want to add some new ones. I just thought if you have a focus just on that topic, you're more likely to get something done.
That's a good idea.
So then I would suggest we try to have a. So do y'all want to do it in a special meeting, or you want to do it as part of a work session, or part of a regular meeting, or what's the best way to do it?
I don't think it'll take as long as it did the first one, because I've been looking at the list, and we have done quite a few of them. You're absolutely right. Some of them we can throw out. We didn't really go straight down the list of priorities. We looked at one from 1 to 1.4 was supposed to be our focus. We got some 2s taken care of, and some 1.4s that hadn't been touched. But other than that, I was really surprised to see that we've actually taking care of a lot of those. Some of them came up regardless of what we thought, but it came up through other ways. Got on the table, got taken care of. But I think it's an excellent idea.
So do y'all want to do it in a special meeting, or do you want to do it as part of a work session or a regular meeting?
I'll do whatever.
Whatever.
How full is our October work session?
How full is our October?
We don't have much of anything.
It's not been
a couple
developed
things
at all.
we've already talked a little bit about tonight.
Is there objection then? Put on October the.
Either 14th?
Oh,
No.
I can see it. It's the 14th.
Yeah, the
October
14th.
14th. Work session.
Speaking of goals, if I may, staff goal is to have an updated progress report on the goals that you provided by the end of the week. So we will try and forward those to you by the end of the week, and then you can review them and we can talk about them. So,
Great.
Good suggestion. Okay. The last one.
It is.
Now, do you mind while we're on that side of the table? Do you have anything on the old business?
I actually started it off without.
Sorry.
He did.
No.
I just want to be careful because Commissioner Hedden said that she would just go around the table. So we're good. Then, do you want to go or you want me to go?
You want to flip a coin? Does it matter?
Why don't you go first?
Thanks.
I should because
Ladies
I
first.
should do that anyway. Chair should always go last. Unless they're shooting, then of course it does. Depends on who get a shot at. I'm sorry. I've been in a deposition all day, and I had to just be real sterile, as Rob, as our solicitor will tell you. So, get to throw a couple out.
I've had some people stop me. One being with the Swim Play Frankfort group, and since they have presented to this, I'm just bringing this up under old business instead of new. I would just like to ask and see if we can get a joint meeting with them to see where we stand with other entities in this town, if it's worth pursuing. If it's the county, if it's with the plant board, if it's with Frankfort Regional Medical Center, and just see with the Derek Graham if it's got some teeth. I mean,
See what cards I can take to go.
yeah, and see what we got.
Or is there anything? Yeah, I guess you already.
we had met, Mayor May and I did meet with Judge Collins and Brad Thomas. It's been a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago, and there was some discussion about setting up a joint meeting with the county magistrate and the commission to talk about direction. And I don't believe we've gotten that far yet as far as setting up a joint meeting.
Okay. Well, can we? That's all I'm asking. If there's support, and two, when can we set up a meeting if there is support per the commission?
I think we need to have a meeting. See where everybody is,
And stop
it's
talking
really,
about
it's really, you know, and I realize we've got a good plan with what we're doing at Juniper Hills.
Yes.
But I'm for it as far as provided we can pay for it. I'm for it. Let me just say that. But it's time to fish or cut bait with this other proposal. They put a lot of work into it, so we need to see whether or not we're going to be behind it or not. And even if we're behind it, it may not matter, because there may not be the funding to begin with. But I think if various people are going to go and try to get funding for it, they need to know where these players are that
Right.
Commissioner Head's talking about. They need to know where the entities are, and we're one of them.
We are.
Yeah, we'll be the key. Yes.
I was just going to add, also, I think at the work session where the presentation was made by the Park and Rec Board for the Aquatic Center, staff was directed to try and put together a financial model for the Aquatic Center. We will present that on October 14th as well, so this may all be time.
I think it's an excellent suggestion, and I think from that meeting, I think that's where the determination of support will come, because we'll see where everybody stands. Otherwise, you're right, we're just shooting in the dark and just, nothing's happening, we're just going to talk about it.
Right, and it's time to know. I mean, 10 plus years that there's kind of been talk and no action. Let's put all the players at the table and see if everybody's got a hand to play or not.
Do you all prefer, in terms of meeting times, and of course we'll have to match it up with this report, during the afternoon, during the evening? This report meets typically early in the morning?
Yes.
And then we meet in the afternoon, of course. Or do you want to just look at dates and we'll shoot dates back and forth? Availability on
Mondays are best with Commissioner Bowers and I, correct?
Okay.
And
so we can ask
any time on them. any given Monday, as long as it's not a holiday.
If we got plenty of notice, I'll make it work.
Well, we'll work on availabilities then for Mondays. We'll just ask the county about their availability in terms of afternoon, morning, or evening. And I say evening, I should say really 5 o'clock's what I consider evening, I'm sorry. So it'll be one of those two then. So we'll work on that.
A little bit of clarification. I just want to make sure. I hear swim play, I hear aqua. Are these all the same thing? Because another one's totally different. So I'm trying to make sure I have the right terminology.
Do you want to answer first, and then I'll answer, because we might have different answers.
My understanding is part of Swim Play Frankfort is that they do have the idea of having aquatics within their facility per the diagrams that they have on the web. Not to say that everything that they have designed would be put in, but it's on their blueprints.
Swim play is the presentation that we received.
Well, we received. We also did the one that Swim Play did was different than the one that Parks Department did.
Right. They're two different entities.
Two different animals.
I'll get with you all after, and I'll make sure I just put down 2.
That's okay. Yeah, 'cause
well, one of them is renovating Juniper Hills Park,
and that's just the city.
That's just the city.
That's just the city.
That's the $4 to $5 million thing, and then the Swim Play Frankfort is the big destination thing, tennis courts and
more like a regional.
I was calling that indoor
Yeah.
facilities.
Okay.
So that's the
okay.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And I guess the way I answer, and I would say that city manager's there. So my response to the folks from Swim Play at their presentation that they had requested to meet with the county judge and myself would be that my response was, we're happy to work with anyone that can make the facility better, but our number one goal was to build an aquatic facility that encompassed the things that our Parks Board made the presentation to us at last meeting, and that we didn't want to take any chance on delaying our opportunities to move forward with the bond at the current lowest rates because of the interest rate risk, which has increased a certain percentage from last year to now. So we wanted to avoid interest rate risk and also be able to not delay getting our facility built while we had the votes on the commission to do it. Because it seemed like the majority of the commission, if not everybody, supports some type of facility, because Juniper Hills needs to be repaired anyway. And regardless of what we do in the aquatic facility, we're still going to make repairs in Juniper Hills. So my line of thinking was, let's don't delay it, and at the same time, if the city moved forward on our aquatic facility, not to put words in the city manager's mouth, but I think we both agreed that it wouldn't affect our decision whether or not we would partner with somebody on another facility or not, and it shouldn't affect the other proposal if we can get this built, because they may be located on the Juniper Hills property, the other facilities, which may be doubtful space-wise, or someplace else. But and after talking with the city manager, I guess the other update was going to be the plans. If we even if we move ahead with ours, we could still be on target if we wait until after or sometime in March or April of 2014 to know if the legislature is going to fund the Swim Play major destination indoor, encompassing all the different facilities, and still be on target.
Or wait until March and it doesn't push Juniper Hills back any further. I mean,
exactly.
But they would only be open 3 weeks shorter? I mean, is that the proposal, that it closes in August versus?
That's what we have now.
So the reality is, I think that we need to discuss this. We need to discuss this as a community. We need to figure out who's sitting at the table, who's not sitting at the table, if this is all talk, or is it time to finally get some action? And if it's time to get action with what this group says they're able to do, then we need to figure out this time with the legislators, with the state, and make sure everybody who's at the table is at the table with their game face, ready to go.
Well, and we know, because we know the city can move forward.
Right.
We know that with 100% certainty, as of right now, we know that if the commission as a whole decides they want to move forward, we can do that.
Yeah, I think we just need to, I realize sometimes it's hard to think that you can do two things at once, but they're not mutually exclusive in any way, shape, or form. And we just need to proceed.
So you'll take care of trying to set up that joint meeting, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
And your old business, Mayor?
The only thing I had is we have, with the courthouse judicial center about to be completed.
December now?
Do you know the answer? I mean, you know what it is. I don't know if you're looking.
It's supposed to be the first week of October, wasn't it?
Second week, I think.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, and I haven't heard it updated, so I don't know. But
January 2nd.
I think it's too soon.
Let's go. Sorry, Mayor.
That's okay. No, good. That was good. We'll see. We'll see who's right. Let's write it down and see who came up with it. You might be right.
She is occasionally.
A lot of times not.
That based on my understanding of lighting needs, the current 5 globe lamps that we have on St. Clair Street from Main Street to Broadway, and from on Main Street from St. Clair to Ann Street, those 5 globe lamps will not fit in the dimensions allowable on the street on St. Clair from Main Street to Wapping Street, and that a decision needs to be made whether or not we have another style of lamp, which currently was proposed.
One of the 3 globe?
The 3
that
globe.
Was proposed?
Well, not by us, but that staff has looked at, and that my question was, do we really want another style of lamp downtown? Because on Broadway alone, there's approximately over 7, maybe 8, 9 different lamps that you can see standing on Broadway, looking around. So my question was, does the commission want to consider allowing staff to bring back some proposals and get some information on whether or not we should take the luminaries, the top part of the lamp post, so like maybe we can keep the lamp post and just put another luminary on top to match the whole length of St. Clair Street and the whole length of Main Street from where they are now all the way down to Washington Street, which cuts off the business district and then goes into the residential district? Or do you put the same lamps all the way down Main Street to Liberty Hall? Just some thoughts before we put money into buying another set of lamps. And if we do the total look of the street lamps downtown, there's more than that, because there's the Cobra heads that I think are going to get replaced eventually anyway by the plant board, if I'm correct on that. I don't know the timeline, but I've heard that. So we just wanted to put that out there to you all, just as a, hey, this is there.
So, Mayor, you're suggesting that it may be best for staff to look to see if we can have a higher level of consistency with the downtown lanes.
Yes, exactly. So
I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is
I also don't want it to look ugly, but I'm fine
right.
with it.
Yeah.
The more consistent they look, the more aesthetically pleasing it looks.
And I guess the question is,
What does Tom know?
And the question is, because of the grant money that was used to purchase the 5 globe lamps that are on St. Clair and Main Street now, those are the only part of the city that has those types of lamps. So we're going to have to find out through Federal Highway Administration whether or not they will allow us to modify our former plan of the streetscape design. We'll have to ask if the Federal Highway Administration will allow us to modify our current design with those street lamps, because those lamps were purchased with Transportation Enhancement Act money, which is federal money, that was passed through Kentucky Heritage Commission, and also the modification was made on the parking on St. Clair that was approved by Federal Highways. So they have done a modification. And I guess the question is if we can move those lamps in their entirety or keep the posts, but use the luminaries someplace else, and I don't know if that works, but we take those lamps and move them to another city facility like parks or behind the flood wall that may need lamps, or we just buy new ones, or we use the post. There's some considerations, but those are things that have to also be. We may all agree that we want to put a certain look, but the Federal Highway Administration may say if we do that, we have to repay the money for those lamps that were purchased previously, which were how much a piece? 4,000, 3,000.
Mayor, I'd want to hear what Tom has to say.
Okay,
and I guess I have one question since I don't quite understand it. Why did we buy 7 different kinds of lamps?
That's a good question.
I can answer that if you want to hear from me.
I do.
Well, I was involved with the streetscape project on Broadway, and it was dictated that we provide light fixtures, not just the poles and the light fixtures that were historically that matched photos that were dug up from whatever people's scrapbooks or whatever, and those, so we call them ice cream cone kind of fixtures. Those appeared in several photos that people dug up, and the poles that we got, which are not very decorative. That's as nice a way as I can say it.
Thank you.
They were also matched these historical photos, and so we were dictated. Patrick, you could talk to Patrick Kennedy, and he's pretty much the one that decided all that. He dictated all that. So that's, and it didn't matter that we city like this pole down here in front of the History Center, and that light fixture, the acorn fixture, was really nice looking. And Tom, you can probably dealt with this too, but it was really just all dictated to get back around your question. It was just dictated by historical pictures of Broadway.
Okay. And I thought that was probably it. But then how do we get all the other ones that are different?
I think it might have ended up the same way. I think it might have just been so they dug up, and now this is just me guessing based on my experience on Broadway. Maybe they dug up some pictures on Main Street that showed the 5 globes. I think they did. Now somebody else.
Yeah, those came.
It never really occurred to anybody to use pictures from the same time. I don't know. It's always easy to look back when you weren't there.
But all I know is that, in all honesty, our hands were, I say our because I was working for the city, our hands were tied because of the funding and the SHPO, call them SHPO, State Historic Preservation Officer, and their hands, they've been given a mandate to do what they did. So, it was really just people following rules that have been laid out for this program, and the city following the people that are enforcing those rules. So that's where we are. Okay,
thank you.
That's why it ended up like that.
Thanks, Mr. Brown. Thank you. Public Works Director Tom Brown.
Okay.
He's probably going to correct me.
Well, no. Our current project is from essentially the Singing Bridge to Main Street, which is my understanding wasn't included in that historic streetscape project. So in doing these sidewalk improvements in conjunction with getting it pedestrian ready for the courthouse, we looked down St. Clair into the mall, looking at the old Capitol, and there were the 5 globes. There's 4 around and 1 on top. So that's what we were talking about doing in conjunction with the county. So as you come across the bridge, you would see the globe lamps down through there. There's some concern with the narrowness of the sidewalk that if you do the 5 globe, one of the globes will hang out in the parking space and is in danger of possibly being hit. So they sell a 3 globe, which is 1 on top and 2 on each side, which would run parallel to the street. So it's a similar looking pole, it's similar globes, it's just two globes less. But it would still, I don't know how else to say it.
And you inherited the problem, so that's not.
But I guess my question is, are you talking about just changing what we're doing now, and then changing everything else later, or are you saying that we shouldn't?
He's talking about we need to plan for the future this time around and kind of have something in mind when we make this decision. Is that what we're?
Because we were stuck with those. We bought those 5 globe lamps, and now they can't be used anyplace. They can't be used consistently through this.
So to keep in mind down the road when we do make this one decision. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. And then a chance to go back and fix. And as Mr. Grouder said, we did use pictures. Because I provided the pictures. I had a bunch in my office that were given to me by constituents. So I had a bunch of in different periods. And there's so many. You can pick if you want it to be 1920s, you want it to be 1800s, you want it to be 2010, what we had there. And if you go back and look at the St. Clair Street area when it was the mall, we had in Tim's office, in the city manager's office, there's a poster that's got what those lamps look like. Just want consistency. And if it was going to be 5 globe lamps all the way down St. Clair and Main Street, even though I don't like those, at least it's consistent. So if we're going to put new lamps in, we still got to put a lot more lamps down through Main Street and in the other parts. So if we can only use 5 globe lamps where they are now, no place else, then maybe because we're talking about 70, 80 more lamps versus with there's 10 or 12 on St. Clair. It's either 10 or 12.
There's 10 or 12 on St. Clair. We're doing, between us and the county, we're doing 7.
And there'd be 7 up there. And then on Main Street, I forgot how many there is between Ann Street and St. Clair. But then the rest of Main Street would have to have lamps. And so then, again, we're getting in. You're going to see those. Somebody go down to Broadway tonight when the lights come on and stand there and look around and see how many.
Oh, yeah.
It just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. But they were tied by the streets thing. But
when will we have an answer on this? Because I'm running out of time to order these.
Well, the one thing too is roughing in, having the electricity there, and having the post being able to be put in at any point after the sidewalk's fixed is not the issue. But if you want to try to have them there before or by the time the Judicial Center opens, I think that's where Public Works is asking.
Yeah, the Cobra heads will stay in place until the new ones arrive. But they're probably a 4 to 6 week from the time we order till the time we get them in.
But when I talked to City Manager, and we just wanted to throw this out to you all, and any suggestions, help is appreciated in terms of how to proceed. And I certainly didn't want to be the only one making that or giving input. We wanted to make sure that, because this was such an issue.
I remember those cones.
You were here, right?
Yes.
And the fairness issue and the pay-as-you-throw thing, serious, are pale in comparison to what this was. I'm not exaggerating at all.
Commissioner, your dad will remember all of those banks over the lights, probably. Or maybe he repressed them. They were so tedious.
Yeah, I never thought I'd have to be dealing with this again. But anyway,
Mayor, if I may, we can look at moving those back further to the sidewalk if you want to go with 5 globes. but it's going to restrict more of the sidewalk. And we can see if it's going to work that way. I don't think it'll line up as well either, but we can look at that if you would rather do the 5. Now, they're probably a little bit more expensive.
That's the thing. I think the cost is more for those. The other thing I would say too is the design when the trees were removed. Because some of us had concerns about taking trees out of the downtown area because of all the energy efficiency in that, which we're seeing now. That trend is huge in cities, but in terms of walkability and livability, it would reduce, obviously, the ambient temperature of the area and provide some shade for people. So the proposal was to have awnings come out from the buildings that could be able to provide shade. And because of the 5 globe lamps, those lamps prevent awnings from being on the mall part. So if we did change those out or change the luminaries, we might be able to go back and put the awnings on the buildings as a consideration.
So you like the 3 globe?
I really don't care for the 3 globes.
What kind do you like?
Well, another thing that some people
what
mention is that you go with domed lighting, of which takes the light from being distracted everywhere so that it's blocked and the light only goes down to the street. One aspect of that, you get less going up. You might actually be able to see the stars at night.
Less light pollution.
And more people have the light coming down, so when they're walking as pedestrians or running in the middle of the night, that more light is shined down onto the street and they feel safer.
And it cuts glare. And one of the things about street lighting for cities is you want to be able to see people's face, so if someone approaching can see, is that an angry person or is that
Right.
a happy person or are they...
So more light is shown down.
But we don't have any like that.
We don't have any like
Not
that.
currently. But
So
now's
if
the
you're looking to
opportunity.
move to a different mindset, just throwing another
That's a good point.
another gamut out there, then
Absolutely a good point. That's why we wanted to put this out.
Mayor, so if we pick a particular light like that for section we have to pick now, then when can we find out if we have to give any money back for those grants for the other lights? I mean, can we just change out the tops?
We don't know. That's what.
I mean, how long would it take to find out?
I guess Ms. Hall would know.
On the parking issue in St. Clair, it took about 6 or 7 weeks to get an answer back from Federal Highways. This may not take as long because, I mean, that was, obviously changing parking patterns and this is just lighting.
So could we pick one, could we decide on a style tonight and then have them look to see if that would require, what?
I wouldn't want to try to pick a style.
Well,
only because we don't have the options.
Well, can we give them the permission to go ahead and pick a style, bring it back to us, and then proceed immediately on determining if we would have to repay any money? We just.
I don't know that it's going to matter to, and Ms. Hall might know, if we just tell them we want to change, would that be something we have to decide?
I would say, from experience, if you're changing it, they would want to get they would want to get approval from the Heritage Council, first of all, to make sure what you're putting back is appropriate. If they approve it, I don't think that the Federal Highways will have a problem. If you're changing it just to something without getting their permission, without getting the approval of the Heritage Council, you probably will have to pay it back.
I don't know if that makes anything clear as well, but I like your thought too about the less light pollution and more focused and less with less.
So how many lamps we got downtown right now that are up?
You're asking how many that we're talking about?
How many we got right now that are working?
I don't know.
Yeah, some of them don't work.
The 7 or 8 styles. How many we got?
Sure.
Some of those are on state facilities.
Right. Well, this sounds like a mess to me.
It is a mess.
But and it also sounds like this dome light might be a really good idea. But if you're going to make a wholesale change, one that's a lot of money, and 2, the timeline is pretty tough, and it may not matter if you waste $28,000 more if you're going to spend $300 and something thousand in 10 years to fix the problem. I don't know this. I'm not sure there's a very good solution to any of this, even as we discuss it.
no real Band-Aids.
No, I mean, it may not make any difference if we
Well,
go
maybe
ahead and
we could
get the
just have
7 lamps that are
time.
three lights.
We could have a time theme on each street.
Yeah.
Like
A walk through history. And this is what the lights we had in the 1877 going.
Russ will love it.
And the other issue that we'll have to make sure is that the county's buying the lights on their side of the street. I got to make sure that they haven't already.
We talked to.
Purchased.
There's a strong chance they may have already cut PO based on that 3 globe alignment. So we came into the St. Clair sidewalk replacement. We came to the dance late, so to speak. They had already planned to install 3 globe lamps with bases and fixtures that matched what was further north in the St. Clair Mall. That we may, as of today, may have already cut PO to look at some of these.
Then we talked. City manager asked me to call the county judge, and the county judge referred me to Robert Hewitt. I'm sorry, their planning director, Mr. Hewitt, and they're going to meet at 3:00 tomorrow.
I heard today. So
And then we can have information we'll get back. I just wanted the commission to know about it because I found out about it was Friday. And so I just wanted the commission to know because this is such a huge issue, and some folks that weren't here have no idea how big this
It was very big.
It was very big.
So we don't want to stir that one back up. So we're going to work with the other lights.
I'm sorry.
Can we look at if we are going with a different light? Can we look at making them LED?
Solar?
Energy efficiency?
Can we get a grant for that? Start.
It makes solar, but you might not get a whole lot of sunlight with all those buildings.
Oh no, yeah, if you never have any light, but it'd be nice.
How about if we get at the meeting tomorrow, the city manager
Big solar panel on the
will
courthouse.
shoot out a memo to everybody. Is that okay? As long as I think the city manager, and I didn't feel comfortable with that talking to the commission is what I said. So he just needed direction and
Kick.
maybe there is no easy answer. We just say, well, we just got to live with it. That's the way. But I just wanted to have the opportunity to look at it. So if there is a way to fix it and make it all good, then we had that input. Whereas beforehand we weren't. We didn't have input.
And someone's going to let you know if the county has done it.
They already said they haven't because they're going to meet. City manager wanted to meet with them tomorrow
On the lights.
Tomorrow at 3:00.
And then after that, you can send a memo to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. And commissioners, thank you all for your input. Glad you reminded us about that. That's your experience as a runner.
It's pedestrian.
Pedestrian.
This is a pedestrian. Been lots of
These are all things we talked about before too, but it just didn't happen. Was that okay? So move on. Any other old business?
No, not here.
Any new business?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Henry.
Mayor, I know that you've been contacted as well. But a citizen called in regard to having someone spraying pesticides in their yard. And city manager, I was going to ask, I guess it's going through the state of the Department of Agriculture as who's spraying to keep mosquitoes away. This person would like to know when their yard's being sprayed so that they're not letting their animal out. And if the state has a plan of when they're going to spray certain neighborhoods, it would be nice to let us know when the yard's being sprayed. So
I'll get you some information by the end of the week.
thanks.
I know there's
Yes.
A lot of times I spray it like 3 or 4 in the morning,
Okay, I won't see.
and then I was told that you shouldn't go in the yard for a day. Sometimes after they spray.
Spraying it all night so nobody knows. Otherwise, they'd be feeling phone calls all the time.
We have provided some information, but we'll dig into it a little bit deeper and provide you some as soon as we have.
Thanks. And just if they had like a neighborhood list, we could just let neighborhood associations know, just the presidents of the neighborhood associations, they could at least have a list and they can know.
I got an email.
Working with neighborhood associations.
I'll try to pull my
No, we decided not to, remember.
Share with Ms. Unger.
Remember?
With the
Nobody wanted
individual,
to.
and share those with everybody too. Any other new business? Discussion items, and we'll limit things to 30 seconds apiece.
Go.
Go. Community survey newsletter report. Is that Ms. Hall?
Thank you.
Did you get one?
Cheers.
If you guys
Oh,
want to
sorry,
look
go
at your
ahead.
packets.
Sorry.
If you want to look at
I
your
started
packets.
looking at it.
On the left-hand side is their survey information, and when you all put together your goals for this year, one of the items on there was to collect survey information and use that to better the community, to do some changes that citizens wanted to see, or focus on things that they were interested in. So knowing that, when our intern started this spring, that was one of his assignments, was to look at some surveys that had been done for other cities, go online, kind of research that, and put together a city survey. So he and I worked together on this survey. We did extensive research online of other surveys, what other cities were doing, and put together a survey. We went to the department heads and let them take a look at it, make any changes that they were interested in, and incorporate that. So that is what you're looking at now, is the survey that was put together by our department and then sent to other departments and with their input. I did a little bit of research on surveys done in the past, and as far as I can tell, there has never been a survey that included all city services. There was a recycling survey that went out in about 2007. There's been a Parks and Rec that went out. We couldn't decide when that went out, but in the last 10 years or so. And then most recently, Mr. Mueller's department has put out a survey for historic properties. But other than that, we couldn't find anything that had been done that included all services. So the idea was to get this information out there, or to get the survey out there and glean information on what people were interested in, what we could do better, what we're already doing right, so we can continue that. And the way that we'd like to do that is, and if you look through your packet, there is a schedule in there. It's kind of aggressive. We may not be ready to move that quickly, but I looked into how we could do the survey efficiently. Now, they're probably, based on the number of garbage bills that go out, about 10,000 households. We wouldn't want to send those to all those. It would be a nightmare. We would never be able to get all the information we want. So I looked at a significant amount, the number that would get the information that we need without having to send out that as many as 10,000. What I determined is the number to be statistically significant would be about 379 surveys in. So I based the numbers you have there for the prices on 500. Now, I started thinking about it, and to get 379 back, 500 is probably not going to do it, because that would be 75% back. So more than likely, we're going to probably have to send out about 750, which would up the price you have in there about $500. So it would probably be about $1,500 for the entire printing and mailing to get everything done. Because what we would like to do is send out a notification card, first of all, to let people know that they're going to get a survey, that they've been selected randomly to receive a survey and fill it out. Ask them to please take a look at it, fill it out, and send it back to us. A couple weeks after they get that, they'll get the survey, hopefully fill it out and send it in, and hopefully we will get at least 379 back. And I've talked to KSU, and they're on board. At least they're the lady that I talked to, Irma Johnson, is on board to help us go through that statistical information and kind of get what information we can out of that.
Can I ask a question? When we did the recycling survey, we actually did a door-to-door drop, and it was in conjunction with, I mean, we didn't just go out and do that by itself. It was a door-to-door drop, and we got a really good response rate. And I'm wondering if there is like a cheaper way, maybe with the garbage collection or something, that could save the postage. Plus, I think that when people actually get a door-to-door drop, it's more, how shall I say, I think we'd get a better response than with the mail out. Maybe not, but I just wondered if we had looked at that, because we did get a good response with the recycling survey. And then I had a question, like, you have Likert scale on all the items except this first section, and I'm wondering why we're just having two options. Agree, disagree. We would be able to get more information if we had interval level data here. If it's on a Likert scale, like all of the other items, so I'm wondering why we're just having the two categories there.
I think that was something that we pulled from another survey, but we can do that if you want. That's nothing is set in stone. We can change anything, add any questions, deleting questions, but yeah, we can.
I mean, I think there would be more room for more information if you put that on the 5-point Likert scale as well.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my thought.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Not even any written comments.
Yeah, that's good. Are there written comments? Oh, there they are. I don't know, like, who was here when we did the recycling? How was the drop done? I don't remember. Do you remember how the drop was done? I don't think we did anything extra, but somebody that was going door to door
But
anyway.
it wasn't this quantity of questions.
I think it was a page front and back.
You should have that somewhere.
I do have a copy of it.
Oh, you do?
I do.
I know this Dropbox.
It was what?
The returns, you didn't have to mail them. We had drop boxes throughout the community. We could just drop them at the library, drop them at
And do you remember how we dropped them at the door? Do you remember?
I don't know that part. I just remember the returns came, there was this specific location. We drop them off and paint. In our historic preservation, we mailed 761 hats. And that was, we were awesome. We did provide return envelopes, but not stamped. So they didn't have to write anything. They said it's
Rebecca, I would suggest that you might want to go a little higher in the hopes. If you're wanting to get your number, 750 may not do it. That's just my guess based on surveys that I've been involved with. But that doesn't mean you won't. I appreciate this. This is really good. I would echo what Commissioner Bauer said about having more items there, and then I think you're fine with just doing a random sample. It's easier. I think you can still get good data. The only suggestion I would make is I think this should probably be done annually or every other year. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks, but there is a way to do it. You can hire an online, or join one of those online survey places, and they'll tabulate it all for you, and the people can do them online, and that might be something to look at in the future. I don't know if that's good. That's the way we used to do them at school. They would just fill it out, and then we would get all the numbers. They would tabulate it all. They'd do all the work for you. It was pretty nice.
monkey survey.
Yeah, monkey survey.
I will just say I did 2 citywide surveys with a mail out, and I got in both cities, both the same size as Frankfort, a 3% response rate, which I was told, which I just did the one, and normally people do a second and a third. So
You're afraid it's going to be hard to get them.
I think if we did a drop, we would get a better number. But I mean, still, you're going to get people that care enough to fill it out anyway, and then you're going to lose the people that don't care enough to fill it out, which,
But we need those statistical significant.
Well, so you're saying the statistically significant number, is that like a 4% margin of error?
5% margin of error with 379. If that's how many we get back, but obviously the more we send out, the better chance I hope that we'll get back. But Mr. Muir was making me a little nervous, so.
Well, yeah.
11% was developed.
I agree with what's been said, and one, I think did a fantastic job with this. It is a little, it's a longer survey, and if you really want to get a good number, I agree with Commissioner Roach. If this needs to be put on our website, because we have some people out there that enjoy us responding, I've learned that with the website. You probably can increase your numbers as far as you can.
Thank you.
Well said.
Thanks very much.
And on the other subject, you want to go newsletter, just briefly?
We were saying 30 seconds. And
I'm sorry.
You talk the time up online.
I know.
And this is, you guys may want to look at this and get back with me on if you're interested in doing this. Because once we get this information in and once we meet the goals that you guys have set for this year, we'd like to get the information out there. Of course, we will use the State Journal and other media, but we may want to do something just with the information that we want to get out there. And so the city manager and I had discussed possibly doing a newsletter. So this is just, obviously it's rough because we don't have a lot of this information yet. But if that's something you'd like us to pursue, what we had thought is possibly starting out with a quarterly newsletter, print newsletter for at least a year, and then move toward a web-based. Once we kind of got people used to getting that information and then kind of lead them to the web.
I like it.
I like it.
My email address just needs to be changed.
It's really long.
It's just Yahoo instead of Frankfort.
I want to say human resource director instead of resource.
Well, thank you for that. Too. I was thinking it was just one of the staff. I didn't know it was everybody.
Citywide.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Do you think am I next to the transportation alternatives?
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. I saw your hand up.
You don't want to mention the like two
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You'll laugh. Serious.
Well, I mean, you talk about did you talk about the grant?
Yes, but let me just tell briefly and then they can look at that and decide what they...
Well, there have been a lot of questions as far as what the municipal aid could be used for as far as recreational trails. One of the things that municipal aid comes from the gas tax. So we're allowed to use it for street improvements and sidewalk improvements within the right-of-way. We can't even use it for subsurface storm. We can only use it for the structure, the sidewalk, the curb, and in the street within the actual right-of-way. So Rebecca and I were talking about it, and she came up with, or found this transportation alternative grant, which may be be some money available for us to use for some of these trails that are on maybe city property, but not necessarily public right-of-way.
Do you want something else to add?
So on your agenda, we have transportation alternative grant on there because it's due October 23rd, so we'll need to get your authorization by the end of this month to apply for that money, those monies. And I had talked to Tom about some possible projects that might be good for this money, and it is, as Tom said, transportation alternatives. So it's what transportation enhancement used to be, trails, sidewalks, that kind of thing. And Tom came up with actually Rails to Trails project that goes from Indian Hills to at least partway to the county park that we would do. And that's what we were looking at. We don't know if you all had any other suggestions on what projects. And
I'm actually going to meet with a representative from Walk Bike Frankfort on the 13th. This is their priority. Drawing was done in 2007. A lot of these items have some of them have been done, some of them have funding, but we don't have the right-of-way available yet. So I was going to talk with them and kind of get their buy-in on maybe a project or two that if we get this money, that's something that we can do.
Good. Let me ask you a question. When you're talking about the Rails Trails project, because I went through this with the folks in Indian Hills a few years ago. That's why I almost started laughing. Going, oh, speaking of old things, lights and rails to trail for Indian Hills. Is that the old railroad bed that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's keep a positive outlook, and nobody have any problems with it.
We own that now, right? Sewer department owns that.
Well, I know that, but the people looked at it back, they didn't. I'm not going to say anything. Let's just move forward. Let's move forward. Sorry.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. They consider it their yard.
And they didn't want people trapped. They were afraid people would commit crimes because of that.
We've gone so far. I mean, I don't know if that's a project that the commission would want us to pursue, but I did talk to Robert Hewitt over at the county, the planning, about maybe doing some connectivity to the park, the county park there. We thought that would be a good idea to maybe have the county buy in and have some connectivity there, so to give an alternative for people to get away from the park. But like I said, well, I'll talk to them to walk back and see what they have. Anything else on that? Are we on to the next slide?
Yeah, we're ready, Tom. Disregard that, sir.
Okay. Update on the sidewalks and trails. I'll be very brief. I promised the other department heads I would. Since one of them is armed, I plan on doing it.
But is he dangerous?
Yes.
Only on the.
If you look right here, this is the survey that we did with a GPS. We went out and we found it's impossible to see all the dots, but these are all the places where we found trip hazards. Some of them were something that we felt we could grind off, and some of them we're going to have to replace. So this was the initial drawing that showed. You could see the number of them throughout the city. Now this drawing shows, and I can make this available, email it to you because it's hard to read. But the blue lines here are existing sidewalks, as you see right through there. And these green lines are the projects that we've done so far. And so in 2010, we redid Louisville Road for, I got the cost on here, I don't know if you want me to go into that much detail. Louisville Road and East Main were 2010, we did 2 sections of it. 2011, we did a large portion of Home Street, kind of along with the repaving and all the work that was done down there. In 2012, we did Myrtle Avenue. One side of the street, the gas company was taking a gas line. We paid them, and they paid the labor. We paid the concrete cost, and they replaced everything on their side. On the other side of Myrtle Avenue, we fixed all this. We had a contractor fix the trip hazards and spots that we couldn't grind down. And by that I mean if it's a small trip hazard, we have a machine, we go in and grind it down, and that's the end of it. But if it's too large, or if it's broken up real bad, we take out the old sidewalk and put in new. And this fill is what we use to fill in the swimming pool at East Frankfort, by the way. Here on Hickory, that's been redone. Sunset, that was done in 2010 as well. 2012, Sunset Drive, we redid that because we're paving it this year. And then, of course, Shinkle, we did that first leg of the Shinkle up here. That's from here up to Shinklewood, and then the next phase will be on it here, somewhere to the landings. John, any questions?
Anybody have any questions on that?
I like that photo. The previous two, I couldn't tell where they were.
Yeah. And so I'll email this out so y'all can.
So we just do a certain amount each year and then just keep going?
We get about $500,000 a year, give or take, with municipal aid. So we try to split that between repaving projects and the sidewalk projects. And in that, we buy some equipment, signs and some stuff like that too that we need to.
And there's never a shortage of projects.
There's never a shortage of projects. We try to mirror, when we go to repave a street, we look at the signs along that street and we replace the signs that need to be replaced. We replace the sidewalk that needs to be replaced on those streets as a priority. Not all of them have sidewalks, so then we break off into other projects. But that's our priority, is to keep the signs and the sidewalk as we repave, to kind of track where we are. But yes, there's plenty to do.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Sure.
Tom, it's about 360 the amount we use for sidewalks right now, with the rest being used for signage. And I remember that number coming up.
That's about, we try to make it about 230.
230
is about for each for paving, and about 230 for asphalt resurfacing.
Any other questions on this?
Yes. May I? Thank you.
We're waiting on you. We're going to let you have the...
I get 30 seconds too.
You get 30 minutes. Your commission?
I don't want 30 minutes. I think I've ever taken 30 minutes. I really appreciate you giving this information, Tom, and presenting this to this commission. It's not an easy task. I do have people from Silver Lake still asking me when they're going to get their sidewalks looked at, and wondering, with our plan that we have, it was the 4-step plan, correct? That we...
There was five priority steps.
Right.
This was in 2009, I think December 2009 it was voted on. There was a sidewalk policy. I don't mean to interrupt, Commissioner.
No, you're perfect. This is, I would love this
the first was to map all of our problems areas. The second was to fix all the trip hazards. Then we're supposed to look at replacing small sections that are gapped, then large sections that are gapped, and then finally is for aesthetic purposes to look at sidewalks that are still passable but maybe just are ugly. But that's the down the road, way down the road. And so before 2009, it was the property owner, the adjacent property owner's responsibility to fix the sidewalk in front of their house, and you all probably know how well that went. So the commission at that time decided that we would take over, and so we've developed a plan, and we did it too. We're in the process of. That's all right. I wasn't here.
I'm just wondering. I guess I was one of the few people that must have done their sidewalk.
Yeah. So that's where we're in the process of doing it, and we did kind of veer from that with Shinkle Lane because the previous commission felt like that was it was pretty hazardous, and that was a project that needed to be done.
And I look forward to that project being finished. And I understand there's a difficult circumstance to deal with, and maybe doing the last phase and then coming back to the rail bed might be another option too, and then just meeting in the middle. I'm not an engineer though.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get people off the bridge as quick as possible. That was my intent. And it might be nice to tie in that rail bed with a staircase, and if you have a future trail project on that piece of the railroad bed, then maybe that would tie in as well too.
And my other questions, I were to go with Walk Bike Frankfort, but I understand you're meeting with them on the 13th. And one of the things they brought up, especially with the Louisville Hill project, was maybe trying to connect into Browns Ferry. I don't know if that's an option now as well.
That's probably something that we were talking about with the something else with that alternative. I don't know that that's something that we would necessarily pave, but we could certainly clean out a path and do that with our own crews and clean out the path and make a walk path up through there. There were some issues before.
Property owners, wasn't it?
The person that owns the property, there's a court decision that appears to indicate that an individual actually owns that old road bed, and she's not very excited about a rail trail or a walk bike trail going up that old road bed.
Which is,
I can show you what it is.
understandable. for that fanciness, modern technology.
We just need to get a screen to go with it.
Here's
Sorry.
this is what she's talking about. See the double line right there? That's the old right of way that comes up from Taylor. It comes up here to the end of Brown's Ferry. And if you actually look on one of the rails to trail or walk by, this is part of a larger plan. Just to put that back into place.
And trying to get that.
I've not walked it, so I don't know how steep it is, but it looks pretty steep.
Anything steep coming up out of South Frankfort? Every direction.
That's what you're talking about right there. And so that's something that we could do with our crews, and hopefully do it at a pretty low cost once we get to go ahead and do it. Anything else?
One other point was that the people in Silver Lake were asking, and I believe it's Stephen, when you come from the county at that stoplight, and just trying to make sure that there is at least some sort of sidewalk from that aspect, so that the kids walking into that neighborhood at least have a sidewalk versus walking on the road.
You talking right here?
Yes, and then it would just go up to Kimball. They would like it to go up further, but at least something to get them off of that intersection.
Maybe on one side of the road?
I mean, everything else in Silver Lake seems to be on one side of the road, so at least one side of the road so that the kids can
there's a crosswalk here.
Right, and then there's nothing. And at least getting it a little further back, I guess past Furlong Court, there's one more street. Is it Equestrian?
This is Equestrian right here.
Yeah, so the sidewalk going all the way to that part of the neighborhood to meet up with wherever the sidewalks go from that point.
Looks like there is sidewalk here.
There it stops up by.
But okay, there it is. There, that's where it stops. And they're asking that it would just continue.
On down.
Yes, just that aspect of it for the kids to walk, so they don't have to walk in the street.
If you all tell me to do it, that's
I would.
It's a little outside the policy, but I'm just following what I've been given. So
yeah.
Y'all tell me something different.
There is no, when you're coming out of Elkhorn Middle School, there is no left-hand turn onto 460, I think, when the school lets out. So a lot of the cars come straight across and go through Silver Lake and then out towards Georgetown. So there is a lot of car traffic on that section when the school's letting out.
Yeah, I've had a couple parents just tell me that they just pull their car up, I guess, on Kimball to meet their kids, and so their kids don't have to walk through and along Equestrian. Oh yeah.
We've been through this before.
My kids will never ride the bus again after what happened last week. So.
Do tell.
No.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, it is.
I haven't been watching that.
If you all would, I guess the next meeting, vote, tell me that's what to do, and that's what.
And then, I'm just also trying to get the commission aware of how much money we use, the process of what the sidewalks since 2009 was set up, and that there are people who have other concerns versus just trying to fix trips that can always be fixed, and they're always going to go, because a lot of the sidewalks are also next to trees, that the tree roots are coming up and they change the plans, but that they're just asking for a little bit of extra safety in different parts of the neighborhood. And the other one that's been brought up to me are the Frankfort High kids that are walking to the Panther Athletic Complex, of which I know Walk Bike Frankfort, when Old Lawrenceburg Road was redone a few years ago, they tried to go to the state to get it expanded, of which it wasn't expanded. But now the state has given Frankfort High that property. They are now having practices after school, and it's another tricky equation when it comes to trying to figure out, because from,
It is a dangerous road.
I guess it's Todd coming around the corner to Old Lawrenceburg, the sidewalk goes, and then you get to Cliffside. And once you get to Cliffside, you have kind of that parking area, and then you have, I guess it's a boiler type house. And then to cross the street, it would make sense to do it at a long angle to get to the parking garage where sidewalk kind of is under the garage, and then it just dies off. But there seems to be enough curb room. And maybe we need to work with Riverfront Development or something and work on another path. But it's something that needs to get looked at. I mean, I drive home at 6:30 at night, Tuesdays and Thursdays when I get off work, and there's some kids just walking in the middle of the street because that's typically where they walk. And
you know, the state is looking again at purchasing some of those businesses along there. Now, whether or not it's going anywhere is another issue. But if you combine that with the riverfront development, and would link it down through there as a path, it might kill two birds with one stone.
yes, most likely it would if it can happen. But you just wish it, hope and pray that nobody gets hit in the meantime. Yeah, I mean,
It's 55. But they're good too.
well then once you get to the garage, it turns 35 just before the parking garage drops down.
I'm talking about the other. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just things to think about, I guess.
Where is Bell Point on the side? You know, when I campaigned, the worst sidewalks I went on were in Bell Point. So where is it in the scheme of?
Yeah.
I'd have to look on when we were planning on.
Right. That was just the worst ones
We redid Klein
We've had lots of flood
last
damage.
year, but it didn't have a sidewalk on it. Now, one of the other things in the policy says that if it is a sidewalk that we are planning to replace at some point, and the property owner wants to go ahead and replace it, they can contact us ahead of time. We'll agree on the amount of concrete it is. They pay the labor. We'll pay for the concrete. And so they can get it done sooner if they don't want to wait for us to get there.
Thank you.
Commissioner, do you have any further? Because I know Commissioner.
No, I was just trying to inform us a little bit about things that I've been called upon, and making sure that we're all aware while we're all together, versus sending out an email, which maybe we get, maybe we don't, but at least communicate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to thank Commissioner Hedden for that, because I don't drive that direction, but I do think when we talk about safety, that in a way should move things up anyway, especially when you're talking about civil, like, and that's a middle school that comes there, because that's something that the possibility there seems higher. And I realize this one out here is stuff also is primarily a sports facility, so it's not the whole school, you know. But I know that you had made a comment that all you have to do is tell us to do it, and we'll do it. I just like to say I do like putting safety above cosmetics.
Right. Well, the trip hazards are safety too, and it's also a liability. And having that plan in place.
No, trip hazard, I understand.
On the trip hazards is important from that aspect.
I'm done.
Thank you. Any others? I guess we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next item is local preference to people limits. I'm not sure who
I need it.
city solicitors.
You sure?
I'm sure you all are familiar with the local preference ordinance that the city already has in place. It's in city ordinances, under policies, and under that, section that basically provides that for non-competitive bids that you can sign up as a local contractor, and if if you're eligible and can provide the service and are qualified to provide the service, then the city is required to negotiate with the local contractor first before it enters into negotiations with businesses from out of town. We also have the ordinance also addresses competitive bidding, and that's where if there is where you're actually going out and seeking competitive bids, then what happens is the local contractor that signed up with the city, you have an application process that signed up with the city, their price is treated as if it's been discounted 5%, because they're given local preference. And if taking in consideration that 5% discount, their price is lower than the out-of-town person, then of course the local business would receive the contract. It's important to remember that, and I'll just use round numbers here because it's easier for me to calculate, but if your bid is $100 and you're a local business, then 5% off, it would be considered to be $95, even though if the city does purchase it, they would actually, from you, they would actually purchase the product for $100. So the discount is just for purposes of seeing whether or not you get the business. The city manager and I have discussed the local preference ordinance, and I've discussed it some with Steve Dawson as well, but at this point in time, in my opinion, I don't think that the local ordinance preference ordinance needs to be tweaked. I think it needs to be publicized, because there are many engineering firms here in town, there are many businesses here in town that would like to do business with the city, and we just need to make sure that they're aware of the local preference ordinance. If you're, let's say you're bidding on a non-competitive, you're bidding professional services, which is the primary area for non-competitive bids. If you're actually qualified and you, as a local business, and you're bidding on a project that's calling for architectural or engineering or legal or any other type of professional services, once you submit your bid, I would say the ordinance allows you to call up whoever's going to look at the bid and say, I'm ready to enter into non-competitive negotiations now. And I think that department head would be required to discuss that contract with you. That's the way the ordinance is written. And again, I think the key is to make sure that the publicity is there, and while we have not talked about the best way to publicize it, we certainly have a very active Chamber of Commerce, and we have a good website, and we may even want to consider sending notices to businesses that have bid on projects.
Don't we have a database of vendors?
Sure.
We can just send it to all the vendors. Chamber, the vendors, and on the web.
Right. There are some things that you could do to tweak it if you'd like to. I don't know that you want to at this point in time, but for instance, some cities have said, well, for local businesses that qualify and can do the work, we will not require a bond if the contract is less than $50,000. I don't know that the city needs to do that yet. Some businesses have said, or some cities have said, well, for a local preference ordinance, we don't want it to provide a preference if the contract is more than for $500,000. But I think those are issues that the commission can review after you see whether our ordinance is effective once it's publicized. And
we don't know.
Right.
15 years, we only got 5 people that are even on.
That's right.
Right.
So, and Mr. City Manager, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything else.
No, sir. Thank you for covering it.
And I don't know if Mr. Dawson and maybe the City Manager and I could get together when he gets back from his vacation.
Cancun.
Not that he's on. Sorry, not that he's out. Future vacation.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Mayor, we can talk about that because he no longer owns a home. You know, he sold his house and he's looking at building a new home, so. But in any event, excuse me, once he gets back in town, we can discuss it, you know, the best way to publicize it.
Thanks. All right, well, anybody else have any discussion on this, or anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner Roach, second by Commissioner Haynes. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Sorry, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, say your seats. Ayes have it.